Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love. We gather every Thursday to celebrate the curiosities of this life and living with harmony and the knowledge of Christ consciousness and everything that exists. And I'm just so excited to bring forth this message with Life of Love. We've had lots of different animal spirits, and we've had lots of people who talk about living with other people, and we've had bees, we've had birds, and today we get these treasured animals that we're going to bring forward, horses. And I'm really excited to share this with the communities of people who adore and love their horses and love to express themselves with and through these wonderful, loving animals that are such reflections of what humanity needs right now. So this is in perfect alignment with Life of Love. Really excited to introduce Theodora. She's coming from across the pond. And we've had such fun getting to know each other, getting prepared for this episode. So I thank everyone for their time and attention, and just so happy to have Theodora. Thanks for being on Life of Love.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, it's been so wonderful to connect with you already. So now I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's so funny. We were both having plumbing issues. You had like a backup of your system on the
Yeah.
street, and I had water coming into my basement, and then I had surgery, and we were like trying to figure out our lives, and finally we're here, and I feel so grounded and loved with this. So thank you for persevering.
100%. I mean, obviously everything in divine timing, right? It's but of course I would have stuck with you. It was great. I knew from the first time we met, I was like, yes, I get this woman. So that's good.
Oh, that's so yummy. Thank you. So, I mean, I could try to describe how you are in the world. I would describe it as mystical, connected, angelic. I mean, there's so many. I feel like you have fairies around you all the time, and I would love for you to share what you've been up to with the horses, and just give people a sprinkle of what you're doing. And I have some questions, but I want you to just introduce the topic and let us know this magical thing that you're doing.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm Theodora. I'm a spiritual seer, healer, and guide. But I work with humans and horses to really connect them in with the horses, especially with their emotional centers. So much of my work is really about bringing us back into our heart centers and our heart coherence and getting us out of our heads, basically. And I've been working with horses. I started off working with the horses be almost 5 years ago now, just doing kind of standard, well, I say standard Reiki, but angelic Reiki. And and I had a really successful multi-award winning business doing that with humans and horses, and it was great. But a couple of years ago, I realized that I was meant to be doing more, or I was capable of more. And the reactions and the horses that I was meeting along the way were changing. And what I realized that we were doing was actually, we were kind of I was teaching the horses, or helping the horses to teach themselves how to emotionally regulate, how to not just release emotion, but how to process it, so that moving forwards, they're creating that solid, stable place within and trust within themselves, rather than it always, relying on, not being windy or but just in the same way as humans, as true trust and confidence and safety comes from within, so that we're not reliant on our outer experiences and things we can't control. I realized that we could apply that to the horses and create long-lasting change and more peace within them, really. So that's probably the shortest way that I could explain it.
Wow. It's like a quantum leap. You're like, okay, so horses have emotions. They're not they're reactive, but they also respond.
Yeah.
So, and okay, So many questions. So you were doing Reiki, and then you realized, were you dealing with more difficult, like, behavior problem horses? Like, how did you come to this, that if these horses have to process these emotions just like we do? Was it a circumstances of horses and you saw the same patterns, or give us
Yeah.
some insight?
Yeah, when I first started, it was kind of, most people get Reiki and an animal communicator in because, they want to know the history of their horse, and they want to kind of know about their horse's personality, what they like, dislike, things like that. And that was great. But like I said, yeah, I started to meet horses that were having bigger issues, were, you know, difficult, for want of a word. But what I realized, I was like, it's not, if it's kicking or biting or aggression or fear or whatever the horse is displaying, they're still just communicating. And we're not knowing how to, they're just going, I'm distressed, I'm distressed, I'm distressed. That's basically what they're saying. And because it gets complicated when you start looking at the relationship between humans and horses historically, and the traditional way of training, and which I was brought up in too. But it really got to the point that the horses, over the years, I realized they were teaching me, this is how we can process the emotion, this is how I can display this. And I learn over time, that, yeah, so much of it is based in the nervous system. And same with us, we need to regulate our nervous systems. We need to be grounded and safe and secure in our body. We need to have all of that going on. And that's part of the work that I was doing with the horses. But yeah, I've learned now. And now that my intention has changed when I'm working with them, so I'm not just looking for this kind of surface level story. Now I am going in with that intention of like, okay, actually, let's work on you being able to heal yourself, you being able to process this stuff yourself. That's what the horses are learning to do. And that's the kind of response that we're getting, from their riders as well, of just going, they're just a different horse, so I'm really excited. It feels like even though I've been doing it for 5 years, it feels like I'm really at the beginning kind of a new massive chapter of this, and I'm just so excited to be able to start bringing it to the equine world, and I think hopefully as well that the equine world is ready for it now a bit more.
Well, I loved how you said, it was Reiki and learning what the horse likes and dislikes. And I imagine you're reading their eyes and what their behaviors are. The snorting, I bet, is a really big sign. But I guess the best way to learn is through a story. So, like, tell me, and yeah, I'm just curious how you tell that horse that you're helping it help itself. Is it telepathic? You have this conversation. Maybe you could bring us through, your
Yeah.
favorite story of like this, wow, this is where I'm going, and this is
Mhm.
meaningful because, not just that in the horse community, but this is group consciousness. Like you said,
Mhm.
we've treated animals, we've treated ourselves like machines for so
Mhm.
long, this patriarchal system. And now you see animals are being more expressive. And even if you just follow what's happening on social media, animals hugging each other and all these videos coming out, baby bird, mother birds telling their babies, I love you,
Mhm.
in speech, not just action.
Mhm.
There's a rise of consciousness, whether you believe in this ascension process or not, there are definitely things happening. So you walking us through the story with the horse that has the largest aura of any animal. I think maybe the whale or the dolphin is bigger. I don't, but
They
yeah.
work kind of energetic. If you go into like which dimension they're working in and the levels of consciousness, horses work on the same level as dolphins and whales.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing, we kind of, people have studied the level of, social interaction and depth of relationship and intelligence that whales and dolphins have. And I'm of the understanding that horses are exactly the same. And just because, we haven't seen that or acknowledged that or allowed that to be at the forefront of our relationship with them doesn't mean that it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah. So I mean, the story to go to your question.
Yeah, yeah. It's just so exciting
Yeah,
because I want people to understand how important this is. These are mirrors of our human condition. So yeah,
yeah.
this is so exciting to me to hear.
I do. So I actually kind of detach. So we have the story of our lives, obviously, like everybody does, and but what I used to find was that I'd go along and it's if a horse had been through some trauma or something like that, and then I was with its guardian, then I kind of found that actually sometimes I was more there for the guardian to be like, oh, yeah. And I would sometimes feel that the guardian was like, oh, yeah. You could kind of feel that pumping up their ego a little bit, of being like, oh, my horse was so traumatized and now they're so happy and they love me so much. And it's like that for me wasn't doing enough, because actually I've always said, like, the horse is my client, not the human. And I'm there. Look, it's kind of like as you start to, depending on how far down your kind of therapy journey you are, when you begin, you're like, okay, this is what happened to me, and you have to get it all out. And then you start to realize that actually our story of what happened to us isn't actually who we are. And
Mm.
yeah, we have to process that and release it and let it go. But sometimes staying stuck in that story and replaying that actually keeps us stuck in our trauma. So it was at that point that I realized, okay, actually, I don't need to know exactly what happened to the horse. I don't need to go digging for the story, but I do want to help the horse shift that energy. So if I was working with a horse, and I always just kind of was just open to what the horse was wanting to show me, because they're also individual, and like us, we might go in on you're not necessarily going to walk into the therapist's office and cut your heart out and stick it on the table and go, hi, here's all my deepest, darkest trauma on your first meeting, right? So sometimes it will take, one session. The horses are kind of like, okay, I can feel that there's something going on here. I can feel this release, but it is kind of more surface level stuff, and it does take 2 or 3 sessions, maybe sometimes, to be able to start getting into the kind of deeper work. So again, it kind of depends on what level of story we're looking for. But the way in which I work is it's working on lots of different levels. And I actually tried to explain this to someone the other day. So on a really basic level, I say basic in a loose form, you've got a level of heart coherence happening. So the electromagnetic fields between my heart and the horse's heart are blending and regulating, and that for me is now, that's where all of the communication happens. It's between our energy fields. And because of the training that I have had previously with psychic work and mediumship and all of that kind of stuff, I learn how to read energy in energy fields and how to merge those energy fields together. And that's why I find it very easy to pick up on what's going on for the horse. So I will hear things, see things, feel things in my body. I will just have like a knowing, and sometimes they will literally speak through me. So
Does your
yeah,
voice change depending on?
yeah, it gets a lot more stuttered because
Okay.
it's having to work through me. So it's not 100%. It's not my consciousness. Yes. Yeah, it's normally more stuttered, and it's that's normally the number one way. It doesn't tend to change in like pitch or anything like that, but sometimes they'll show me, if they're like their personality, if they're trying to get their personality across, sometimes they'll show me like a human counterpart, like I can't think of the word, stereotype. So if you've got like a stereotype of human, you'd be like, okay, so they're like, I don't know, I guess like it would be like a jock I'm trying to transform it into
like
American
like a
language.
Barbie girl
Yeah,
or an army officer.
yeah. So like
Like
you've
a
got those kind of stereotypes so that you can kind of understand on a more rounded level what their personality type is. And then within that, there's obviously the individual kind of changes, things like that. But yeah, so there's that energetic, that's where most of that's kind of level one of what happens when I walk up to a horse, right? And then
and they do they sit back and look at you like what's happening here?
yeah, sometimes yeah, it's fun, and it depends, sometimes the horses that you would expect to be more shut down are actually really open and just want to be healed straight away, and they kind of go in, they go much deeper. Sometimes the ones that you think would be more open are actually a lot more private and take a lot more kind of time to open up. So again, it just, you can never really go in with any kind of expectation. You just have to say, I kind of just go, look, I'm this safe space. I am this channel of unconditional love. You can come in and out of it as in when you want or need, but I'm here to help you, and I'm here to help you heal and help you feel better.
And they get that all through your heart coherence. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love because that's Mother Gaia energy. That's the unconditional love, that acceptance, just nurturing. Okay, so you get the prototype and they're like, okay, here I am. And you're like, I see you, I'm here.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so level 2, ready.
So that's happening. Then I'm also attuned, obviously, to the angelic Reiki and to the God coding energy. So I'm channeling that as well as, so that's when I channel God energy, I see God as unconditional love as well. So not only is it coming from my connection to Mother Earth, but it's also coming from my connection to God. So that's amplifying the amount of unconditional love that I'm just pouring out into the stable normally. and then I'm then using the techniques that I've learned over the years of energy clearing and energy healing, and that can work in a number of different ways. Usually I can see the energy, but not in a way, I don't know how other people see energy. Some people explain, say like, well, they see colors or movement or things like that. I see the energy as if it's not there, which sounds like a really bizarre thing to say, but it's like you're seeing an energy. Sometimes, how they, in like movies, they show an energy field, or like when someone's invisible and they're just a bit wobbly, like that's kind of how I see energy sometimes around the horses, or I can just feel it. So like if they're really stuck in their head, I will literally feel like I can't feel, all of my attention is in my head and I can't feel the rest of my body. So then I know, okay, I need to start moving the energy down from their head, down their spine, down their body, and down into through their feet and down into the ground, to kind of just get the energy moving. Sometimes I'll work physically, so quite often the horses will like turn and give me a body part, or a body part will start aching in my body, so I'll know sometimes I need to work down their neck or down their back or over the withers or the pelvis, like the main junction points. Sometimes they'll just come and stand and give me their head, because we can do a lot releasing the body through just working with the head. So there's so many there's so many different things that are kind of happening all at once. And then I'm also, but whilst all of this stuff is happening, I'm also telling the human what's going on and what I'm experiencing, so that they know what's happening. Sometimes I'm also picking up on the human. And then actually, because when you're in that state, when you're in that level of heart coherence, your your energy fields expands to 9 meters wide. So quite often, even if I'm working on one horse, there'll be, the horse next door or the horse opposite that will also be licking and chewing and yawning and going to sleep. So sometimes I've had 6 horses all at once, the whole barn just just nods off because we're all picking up on it. So
Oh.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. It yeah, so there's just levels of, and so yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing. I guess in a and but the funny thing is that all of this stuff is happening, and all it looks like is that I'm standing next to a horse. Like I'm just standing there, probably waving my arms around a little bit. So I completely understand that to the naked eye, it looks like not much is really going on until then people are like, okay, yeah, my horse wouldn't normally react like that, or I've never seen a horse be like that with you, or with strangers, or things like that. I had a client recently, and she said to me afterwards, I'd spent an hour or so with her stallion, and she said, I knew there was something about you from the moment before you even turned up. She went, one, I never let people, normally I don't let people into his stable because he normally just tries to eat them. And I the whole time, and there was a bit of nibbling, but it wasn't, I was just like, no, I set that boundary, and then that was that. And then he was, he just went straight into the session. And then she said, but the most interesting thing, she went, do you do dogs? And I said, no, I just work with horses. And she said, because I have 2 guard dogs who are huge and they never stop barking, especially if there's a new voice on the yard. She went, but from the moment your car pulled up, they've been silent. She was like, so I knew there was something about you before you even got out the car. I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of my jive.
Yeah, exactly.
Love knows love. And so with her, and I know you probably can't share details with clients, but is there a situation where you ask the guardian to sit, or you have to you just telepathically send them your heart coherence and that balances them so you can focus more on the horse? Or how do you balance because I know that there's energy levels of the guardians can and usually do affect a horse.
Yeah.
How do you, it's going to be a lot to manage at the same time, or I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
I mean, to be honest, I think it happens organically. Like my focus is the horse, but then, just like I'll start yawning or the horse will start yawning, sometimes the guardian will start yawning as well. Again, I can start picking up on things in my body. I'm like, if my hip is off, and they're like, oh no, that my hip hurts too. And so I just start to, when I'm working on both at the same time, something will come up and they'll think, oh no, I think that's me. But it's such an important, we really underestimate when we're not aware of our energetic fields and how that is the main way that our horses are communicating with us. We really underestimate how much our energy and our mood and our nervous systems are affecting our horses. And so that's really why, what I'm working on now is trying to work with the horse and the rider, because I think, if when we can clear out our energy fields, and you kind of get in this kind of cycle, if you turn up stressed or your horse is stressed, and so then you're like, oh my gosh, why are they stressed? And so then you get stressed, and then you're both just in this negative cycle of stress. and that just, and so that can create bad habits and bad patterns and all of these things that we expect. And it just, and life is life. It's not, I'm not saying that we all have to like go around being totally peaceful with our horses all the time. Like that's not real, but it is about being able to recenter and have more awareness of our relationship with them, to be able to then deepen that connection and deepen that relationship and have it more built on trust and safety and consent and boundaries and all of these things, to ultimately help people get the results that they want from their horse, no matter what that is. It doesn't matter if you just have some Shetlands that you have running around in the field that you go and sit with, to if you're a happy hacker and you just go for a plod, or if you're, some Grand Prix Olympic show jumper. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. At the end of the day, you still have that connection and that relationship with your horse. And my aim is to really just make it more harmonious for everybody involved, you know, using our energy, which is just the most natural resource. So
I love it. I love it. There's so many things right there. And what keeps coming up to me is this, the state of neutrality. Like you can't, like you said, you can't always come with complete heart coherence. If you're having an off day, just try to find neutral and then go from there. Like don't judge how you're feeling. Don't judge your energy. Just accept it. Ask it, and that to me, that's like, if you can start there, you don't have to start with how you're going to end. Just start with where you are and be neutral with it, and you can go from there. That's been a huge thing for my life, is I always wanted to jump to the 10th stop, and sometimes you just got to be where you are and be okay with that, and horses can pick up on that. Do horses have chakras like people?
Yes. Yeah. So they each, it's one of, when I did my animal communication course, and it was one of the things that, was the main part of it, because they just, in your basic kind of animal Reiki, they just teach, okay, just work on each chakra and go down and do that. And I was just like, it felt too, like it did when because I started off with the Sui Reiki with the humans, but all of the knowledge and working and stuff that I'd had with mediumship and psychic work, it kind of felt too structured in a way in which, I mean, that it was too human led rather than spirit or energy led. And so quite quickly, when I started working, I just went, no, I need to work where I feel I need to go, not where I've been taught I have to, I can't work from along the chakras in an order, because that's not life.
Yeah, it's a recipe, and we don't follow that. Oh,
yeah.
So when you mention having a horse ground, is it always the same way? Is that part of consent? Like, how you want to go into that a little bit about how you actually ground the horse, or is it just a telepathic?
I mean, the way that I do it is I because I can kind of see where the energy is building up. But an easy way to do it, if you want to work with your horse, is literally to run your hands from like their pole at the top of their head, run it down the spine and down their body, and just run it off their back end. Like just sweep it down, because so just like so much of us, we get stuck in our heads. So, and if you, in the same way that you can, people do like energetic body brushing, it's the same thing. You just, when you think about grounding, you're sending roots out down your feet. It's the same thing with the horses. Like I will envision roots coming down out of each foot and down into the ground. I do find it's always easier if the horses don't have a full set of shoes on. So if they've got, say, maybe their hinds off, or if they're barefoot, then they're instantly much more connected and easier to ground, because they haven't got that, metal in between them and the earth. So I definitely find that that's easier, and that helps to regulate. But that's an individual thing. But I think, again, there is a big swing towards people understanding more about barefoot and the benefits of it. I mean, it's not an area that I have any kind of expertise in at all. But I took the back shoes off of my horse when I had one, because I was like, actually, it felt like the right thing to do.
What was the basis for shoeing horses? Is it so they could walk on concrete and not split their nail beds? Or
yeah, it's just keeps their feet. Well, back in the day, it would be for kind of going over hard ground where they were working all day every day. But and it depends on the grip. I think you can have road nails put in to help them grip if they're on roads and stuff now. But I mean, I'm not a farrier and I know nothing about shoeing, so that's not my level. That's not my area of expertise. But yes, it's meant to be so that, and some, I mean, again, it's individual. Some horses have very soft feet, some horses have very hard feet, so it's easier to, some horses, they'll just say they're never going to be okay without, shoes on and whatever. So you have to take it on an individual basis. But I have found that it is easier to ground the horses. Like when we're told to go out and walk barefoot,
Mm-hmm.
it's exactly the same. Works on the
Yeah.
same premise. So
I know. I was watching that. It's called, I thought, Earthing. It was on the Gaia channel. It was
yeah,
such a great documentary that they put together with the science and different, scientists and
yeah,
research that actually shows what's happening magnetically with you in the ground. And we
yeah,
just, we just
exactly.
overlooked it.
Yeah.
It makes you question everything about, the process of how, everyone used to just pull their cat's nails out. It's like, well, you just got your cat declawed so it wouldn't tear up your furniture. And now it's like, don't do that, like
Yeah.
so
Well,
all
that's the
these
thing.
things.
It's so funny you were saying about, now we've got the science. Like that's what I've really been finding is
Mm.
now that I'm finding that there is research being happening, all of this stuff about heart coherence is becoming more well known, and people are even doing research with horses about it. And I'm like, finally, as I'm discovering it as well, I'm like, oh, now there's stuff that it can explain it's easy. I understand it, but I understand how it works, but it's really helpful to now have a kind of framework and basis to be able to show other people, to give them that kind of, because a lot of people, I think that a lot of spirituality, and I don't think there's really I think science and spirituality are quite often the same thing. It just depends on which angle you're coming at it from. They're kind of
Mm-hmm.
two sides of the same coin. But it's definitely helpful when the science is now starting to explain and prove the things that you've already been doing spiritually. I think it helps to bring things into the mainstream a little bit more. So that's where I'm hoping to start taking it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Like those meters that show the electromagnetic current and the
Mm-hmm.
coherence. It's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
we could talk to a plant and it changes. It's
Yeah.
just in that what they're doing with water studies. The intention you put on water changes the way the water looks under crystalline when they
Mm.
freeze it. It's just all these things. I love how it's the science is coming together and showing that our thoughts, our prayers, our hearts do make a difference.
Makes everything. Yeah.
So,
I had it
yeah.
in 2019. I had a client who was he was a surveyor, and so he had this like gamma camera that he would use to find damp and stuff in houses. And he brought it to this business thing one day, and I said, "Could you bring this to our next session?" And so he recorded. He took pictures of my hands before we started working, and then once I'd opened up to the Reiki, and you could see the temperature of my hands go up because of the energy that was flowing through them. And then by the end of our session, we did it again, and my whole hands were bright white because of the amount of energy that was flowing through them. And I was like, finally, I've got some proof that this is happening. So yeah, that was exciting.
It's so beautiful. And, to me, it's like these are signs that, yes, every thought matters. Everything that you do matters. And the horses are another vehicle to show us,
Yeah.
that these things. And then their ability to be whole and one helps us be more happy and fulfilled. So it's like that, that we are one. We're all so connected.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful metaphor. Well, not even metaphor. It's a symbol. It's not a symbol. It's a symptom. All these symptoms.
Yeah. I know
Mm.
it always baffles me. We kind of, I see so many people that absolutely love their horses, and yet traditionally, we've completely neglected their emotional well-being. And we focus so much on their physical well-being. The first thing anything, oh, my horse is a bit depressed, so everyone calls the vet. And it's like, would you, if you were depressed, like, why wouldn't you call a therapist rather than a doctor and go? But I mean, again, it's that kind of whole medical system that so many of us are still in it, and we're going down the same thing with our horses. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I'm trying to explain to people is actually, if we could start treating our horses with understanding that they need this care and emotional space, and being able to teach them not only to release but to process their own emotions like we would a child, then, actually our horses can be so much happier on so many different levels, which, lets them perform better. And, I'm really hoping that we can start to open some doors for people to see actually the difference in their horses once we start taking their emotional well-being into account, and just seeing them as the whole wonderful depth of beings that they
Yeah.
are.
They're sentient beings, right?
Yeah,
They
but
know
it's
when we're coming.
on a really basic level. I'm like, if you were in a relationship with someone and you know and you were basically being emotionally neglected, and every time, and you were going, I'm in pain, or I'm not happy with this, or whatever, and they just completely ignored you, or they called a man with a white coat to stab you with a needle every time you tried to express your emotions, you couldn't be completely happy. And so it's like, it works in the same way as our horses, so it's like, if we can, I'm hopeful now for the change that I think we can make, for not only the horses but also for the humans too, because that's the thing. If we start looking at co-regulating and all of this kind of stuff, once if you do turn up at the barn and you are stressed, if your horse is shut down from you and is only working because they need to follow the steps of what they need to do, actually you're not going to be able to get the benefit of the healing that they are capable of giving you either, because actually you're both shut down from each other in that way.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's a
a
benefit.
synergy. It's a
Yeah.
synergy of. So, okay, so I'm just dying. Horses have every emotion we have. Are they jealous? I know they can be angry. I've seen angry horses. Do they have attachment issues? Like, do you see
Yeah.
like patterns, or is it every single horse has its unique emotions, just like people?
Yeah, every horse is completely unique, and it will, and it is, some horses are very sensitive and some are not, and it just, it can do, and it, just like us, two horses can go through the same experience, and their outcomes can be completely different, just like we would, so because they also have genetics and all of this other stuff that feeds into all of the ways that they respond to trauma and life, and just who they are. So it has to be done on a kind of individual basis. But yeah, obviously you can, like us, you can generalize. But I mean, like a horse that's coming to mind, that I treated a couple of years ago, and he'd moved, his owner had just got him, and he had really bad separation anxiety. He used to call for his friends all the time, and would struggle to leave the yard if she wanted to go hacking. And it was due to when he was weaned. So it was down to, he hadn't left go when he's left his mother. And so once we kind of just released that and processed that through, she was like, he's 90% better instantly. She was like, after one session, he's just 90% better. Like, he doesn't call, he's much more relaxed, all of this kind of stuff. So sometimes it is literally, I mean, I've heard so many horses kind of say to me, just thank you for listening. That's the thing. It's just, sometimes we just need that space to be able to go, this is the problem. And for someone to kind of just hold that for us.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, the release of guilt that the caretaker, the guardian has, that it's not something they're neglecting. It's not something outwardly that they're neglecting. They're not hurting. It's an emotional thing, and it's a trauma that they, how is the guardian supposed to know this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
so they
You
can
think,
release it.
it's the same with us, when we're holding emotional stress and trauma, or trying to suppress it, or all of the stuff that goes on internally, it creates stress in the body, and that therefore creates inflammation, and we're more likely to get ill. So your horse, if your horse isn't emotionally well, it's more likely to get physically unwell,
Just
because
like
it
us.
yeah,
Just
because
like
it's in a
us.
heightened state of stress. And people go, oh, they're flight animals. Yeah, okay, they're flight animals, but equally doesn't mean they're not in flight all the time. You know, they also have times of rest and relaxation, and just so that they can heal, just like we need. And that just like us, we don't really allow ourselves to get in, or modern society is not poised to send us in that, you know, rest and relaxation. It's very much still a go, go, go. But I can see, you know, it is changing. But again, I think I'm interested to see the parallels between how things are changing in the human world, and hopefully the changes that we can make in the horse world too.
That's really exciting. And one more question. I know our time is. Can you, through like a iPhone or a, you know, with a app, can you remote view a horse's heart coherence and treat them, or is it something you need to be right there?
I know some people do send distance Reiki to horses. It's not something that I do. Just because, like I said, because I feel what I'm doing is more than just Reiki. I need Because I need to be able to read the horse physically. Like sometimes it can be the tiniest flick of an eye, or you know, I can just see a muscle start to loosen, or, you know, a jaw. There's so much in their body that I've learned to read that I would never be able to pick up on a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and also you need to be able to read the energy in the room. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just such a, even though they're such huge animals, the changes in the energy field can be so minute. I personally don't feel I could do the complete service that I bring if I was just online.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense. That's fair.
yeah.
That's fair. And you'd have to rely on the camera the person holding the camera to look at what you were going to look at, and how are you to explain
Yeah.
it? Be a total.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But also I just love meeting the horses. So, you know.
Oh my gosh, I know, and the different stables, and just
Yeah.
the whole thing is just a great thing. Oh yeah. Well, one thing I was wondering, how do you know that a horse is consenting?
So I ask.
Okay.
So straight away, normally I can tell just by a feeling if I need to be going into that horse's stable or not. So quite often I will work, I can work outside of the stable. I'll start there, and I'll just allow them, and I'll get a feeling, and it is just okay, now I can go in. But equally, you know, if you've had a horse, if you've got a horse that's very territorial, or if you've had a horse that's on box rest, you know, if they've been stuck in their stable for a long time,
Oh, mm-hmm.
that's their it's kind of a mixture of, that's their safe space, but it's also the place where they're traumatized. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It would be
just
like
letting
going
you,
into like a kennel of a dog. You know what I mean? Like you
yeah,
never want to go into a dog's kennel because that's their safe place. Or especially if
exactly.
they bring a treat in there and they feel threatened, that would be
And it's like, you know, it's like someone getting into bed with you without asking. You know,
mm-hmm.
and it's like, actually,
Yeah.
and it's one of the things I say is, like, when we start looking at consent with our horses and boundaries and things, like, everything so often is just done on our terms. It's like, right, I'm going to come into your stable,
Yeah.
I'm going to brush you, I'm going to feed you, I'm going to do this, blah, 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 I'm going to take you out, I'm going to, you know, it's all done for them, but it's on our agenda.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
what I would that's the center of my question is like, you do these things to care for your horse. Do you give them a choice? Do they want to be fed or brushed first? Or like, you treat them sort of like, to keep a happy 2-year-old. You let them
mhm,
think that they're in charge somewhat because you give them two choices that are both the things you want to do, but
yeah,
at least they get a pick.
yeah, it's about giving people agency, and
Mm,
that autonomy of, like, actually, yeah, I do have a say in how my life gets lived within the parameters of that it needs to exist in. But that is exactly, and that's the thing, the more attuned that we are with our horse, like, everybody knows, you know, whoever's looking after their horse most knows their horse. if you turn up and the horse is in a good mood or a bad mood, that day.
You're like, I'll come back later. I'm going to go help another horse. I'm
Yeah,
going to give you some
exactly.
time. Just tell them,
Yeah,
wow, it's so beautiful. It's treating
but
them
it
like a
just,
friend.
yeah, like, it's the thing. It's like, I was just saying, like, would you speak to a child like that? Like, would you treat a child in that way? Well, then it's not okay to treat them like that. And
It's
that's
a different dynamic, right? Like, not
yeah,
everyone is in that frame of mind, and if people see there's a pattern of horses being more productive, more happy, more
yeah,
successful, and their trainers are doing things like you're talking about, it will catch on. Like,
mm,
results will fuel behavior.
yeah,
That's just where we are.
yeah. And that's the more attuned that we are to, that's the thing. The more that we can open up to this energetic understanding and this energetic relationship and conversation that we're constantly in, the more that we can, um, the more that you don't need people like me to come in and tell you to answer that question for you. You'll know if you ask your horse the question, you'll pick up on the answer because you'll understand it in your own energy field, and then you'll go, okay, fine. But it's funny how you were saying about seeing the results. Like, it kind of always makes me laugh, especially with dressage riders, because there was like, dressage is about the horse being relaxed and so free, and we want this free flowing movement, and yet the horses are always the most rigid and stiff and repressed than any other horse. And I'm like, and it just makes, I'm like, when you start opening up the horses emotionally, and when you start allowing them to let go. I was working with a dressage rider recently, and she said she wasn't really into it. She got me in, or the owner had got me in, and because I treated one of their horses previously, and then the rider, after one session with me, she got on the next day and she went, yeah, okay, I could feel the difference in him. I can see what this stuff's about now. Because it's like us. If we're constantly holding on to all of this, people say, oh, relax your jaw because that's where you hold your attention. People grit their teeth, all this kind of stuff. Like, as soon as you allow that out, you have an outlet for that, your whole body starts to relax. So it works exactly the same way as the horses.
It's really cool. I have one more question.
Okay. One more.
It's like, I can't forget to ask this. Have you ever, okay, so I am not a horse expert at all, but the horses that do the intricate dancing, they're like Spanish, and it's just beautiful. It's show horses. Have you ever been in the presence of one of those horses who seem to be elite, who seem to be so balanced because they can do all these maneuvers, like ballroom dancing, horses that basically are ballroom dancing? Are they just trained to do that, or is it because they're emotionally stable and maybe those trainers have more of what you do involved? Like, I'm just wondering if you've ever been in the field of one of these animals that have
So
reached this pinnacle of
that's what I was saying about the dressage horses. So
they're tight.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, and there's a kind of a big conversation going on at the moment about the horses being like, with their heads being behind the vertical, and the horses
Oh yeah, they do that thing with their head.
really
Yeah,
pull
they
their neck
tuck
in.
in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
really unnatural, and a lot of the time it creates so much tension through the back because it's just such a completely unnatural and can create pain. But what's interesting is that they're noticing that the horses at the kind of top level, the horses that are getting the furthest and getting the highest marks are the ones that are behind the vertical. So it's the judges, and it's that whole kind of top level of competition that are encouraging that tightness, and the kind of opposite of what I personally would be looking for. But again, now we've got the research that's coming through and is showing statistically, like, we know that this is causing the horses pain, or we know that this is causing them discomfort, and there are so many signs of distress that you can see in the horses, but yeah, that's what's getting the top marks. So there is a massive change that needs to happen throughout the equestrian world. And I was having this conversation with a friend the other day who's also into training in a similar way to me. And she'd done the kind of top competition stuff, and she just went, I couldn't do it anymore because I couldn't see so many horses not being, being with them being so unhappy. And I went, yeah, I get that. But equally, I don't know, in my theory, I'm like, well, if I can go into it, if I go onto a yard, top competition yard, and there's 40 horses and they're all sad and they're all, whatever they are, right? If I can help one of those horses, then I've helped that one horse. And then if I can show that one owner or rider that there's a difference, then maybe I can help two horses. And so we kind of have to, I used to work in sales a lot, and I kind of got used to being told no all the time. And I always think, do you know what? It only takes one. And if we keep having these conversations, and if we keep expecting to say no, and expecting the skeptics to go, I don't believe in this. And I'm like, okay, well, let me just show you. Let's just see, because I'm either right or I'm wrong. And if, it doesn't matter to me if I'm right or wrong. But if I can help your horse, or if I can broaden the owner's understanding and, just start these conversations, then maybe that's all I can do. But at least I'm doing something. And eventually I think, we have to be the change we want to see in the world. It's got to start somewhere.
Oh, I'm just so honored to bring forth your message today, and I know that it's going to reach the people that need to hear it, and it's just so beautiful. And I can see the power structures being dismantled and rebuilt into what's best for everybody. And so that's what I love, is helping be part of that movement. So thank you so much for what you're doing for people and horses and everything.
Honestly, thank you so much for just giving me the space to to talk about it. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you, and I'm just so glad that we connected. So thank you.
Thank you.